Football at 4 is powered by the Inside the Birds podcast, and Andrew DiCecco is here with the matchups for Monday night. It's a Thursday. Andrew's here. I think he just left the NovaCare. The Eagles just wrapping up their practice in preparation for the Atlanta Falcons. Football at 4 is brought to you by Bet365. Whatever the sport, whatever the moment, it's never ordinary at Bet365. Let's bring him in. Andrew DiCecco is here, coming off of a Friday night win against the Packers. They'll now go to Monday Night Football, prime time again, and they'll take on the Atlanta Falcons. Some of the matchups that Andrew's looking at, he joins us now on the Sports Bash. What's up, buddy? How are you?
Hey, Mike. How you doing?
All right, man. And we got Monday Night Football now, so we got to wait a little longer. It was Friday night, now it's a Monday night, so we're out of the routines. But let's get into some of the routines here and look at what the Eagles did well on Friday night, Andrew. They ran the ball. They ran it 26 times with Saquon Barkley, 109 yards, a couple touchdowns. Should he find more running room against this Atlanta front on Monday night?
I think in theory he should be able to. The Eagles' offensive line performed a lot better than I expected, particularly Mekhi Becton and Cam Jurgens, the two new faces on that offensive line, paving the way. You saw that combo block on the Saquon Barkley touchdown where they teamed up together. I think that there should be running room to be had there against Atlanta. And really, to take it a step further, I think it could also be a pretty big throw ball game for the Eagles, given some of their deficiencies on the back end.
Yeah, let's look at the Eagles' pass. Obviously, Brown and Smith, they're going to be, last week, I like Smith. I thought he would have the big game. He didn't have the big yardage game. But, Andrew, he came up with some big moments late in that game, kept the chains moving here. So is this a Smith game, a Brown game, or maybe both of them?
I think this is going to be a really big Devontae Smith game, especially when you saw last week they utilized him primarily out of the slot. And that matchup would be D. Alford, the corner for Atlanta, where he's very pedestrian. I think that Devontae should be able to get 85 yards plus in this one. A.J. Brown, he's going to win most of his matchups anyway. It doesn't necessarily matter who you put in front of him, but A.J. Terrell, the Falcons' top corner, is a really good player. So I think that he may draw – he's obviously going to draw that assignment, and I think as a result, you're going to see a Dallas Goedert and a Devontae Smith really reap the benefits.
Yep, I like to hear that. Decent secondary. Terrell's pretty good. They brought Simmons into play, safety. This defense kind of interesting.
Bates is there as well. So they have two veteran safeties that I think – they're very good at manipulating quarterbacks and playing that center field role where they can kind of give you some unique looks. So I think Jalen Hurts is going to have to really be on his P's and Q's and protect the football because they do have some playmakers on that back end that can take the football away.
I want to talk about the Eagles' offensive line, which you kind of touched on a little bit, some combo blocks, but Jurgens, his debut, Becton graded out really well, and then, of course, the veteran guys who have been there together with Dickerson and Mailata and Lane Johnson. What kind of advantage did they – because Grady Jarrett, he seems to always play well against the Eagles. That Eagles offensive line against the front of Atlanta here.
Yeah, Grady Jarrett is someone that he had 3 quarterback hits in the game last week against the Steelers. He's a powerful force in the middle. Matthew Judon, of course, is another threat to rush the passer. He can affect the game that way. But I really like the Eagles' offensive line. To be honest with you, I'm going to take them more often than not in any matchup because I really like what they have. Obviously, it all starts with Lane Johnson, at right tackle holding things down. But I also was very impressed with what I saw from Mekhi Becton. And I watched the game back twice to make sure my eyes weren't deceiving me. But Mekhi Becton did a tremendous job. Cam Jurgens, yes, there was that botch snap, but I think by and large he really held his own, especially when the footing wasn't great. That field was an absolute disgrace.
Yeah.
And I just thought that the offensive line as a whole really outperformed expectations given the newness, 2 critical pieces in the interior.
Yeah, I know the other day Kellen Moore was asked about the snapping. Was this just a one-time, hey, we were just – because you saw there was an exchange on the sideline between Hurts and Jurgens. Was that just a one-time thing, or is there something bigger than that? It doesn't seem that it's bigger, right?
No, it's not. It was just a one-time thing working on communication. That's something that I really honed in on throughout the summer to see how that was developing, and they really made great strides, and I think that was just sort of a blip on the radar. You saw Jason Kelce he's not perfect either. He had some issues with snaps last season as well. It happens, but it wasn't a problem throughout the game. I think after that they were able to settle in.
We're talking with Andrew DiCecco. Before we go to some defensive matchups, if somebody has the bigger game, is it the pass game, a receiver, or is it Barkley again? Is this a Barkley night, or is this one of the receivers' night?
I think it's going to be a big receiver night. Maybe not AJ, because AJ Terrell is, like I said, is a really premier corner in the NFL. So he's going to obviously be up for this game, and that could impact his effectiveness. But I think Devontae Smith and maybe even Jahan Dotson could have they're going to have a benefit on their side, given they have a corner in Mike Hughes on the outside, who is a journeyman, not very big. He's about 5'10", doesn't run particularly well. He's been banged up a lot in his career. He'll be on the outside, and then the inside you'll have D. Alford, which is where I really think that Devontae Smith is going to thrive.
All right, Andrew DiCecco, at Andrew DiCecco on the X platform. We'll go over to the defense where pass rush was a problem, and Huff, that conversation. You had Graham get more snaps. You had Smith get more snaps. Sweat didn't really make the pass rush just wasn't there, whether that was the field or what. But should they be able to get to a statuesque Cousins on Monday night?
I do believe that they can. Look, the Steelers, they have a vaunted pass rush, so maybe that's not a great measuring stick, but they had 2 sacks. They had 7 quarterback hits and 8 pressures. So I think when you look at what the Eagles have, they should be able to manufacture some sort of pass rush, disruption up front. And they really have to. I mean, Bryce Huff really needs to get going. Obviously, he gets graded on a curve a little bit because the field conditions really affects edge rushers in terms of angles and leverage and things like that. So this is where they really need to get going, and they are going to have an opportunity to pounce on someone like Kirk Cousins, who is very stationary back there. He operated mostly out of shotgun in that game, which is a little puzzling, but I think this is a game where they get going.
Yeah, and if they don't, is that a concern? If we were talking on Tuesday that they didn't get to the quarterback, are you going to start to worry about this pass rush?
Yes. Then I think it's fair to start to question and have some skepticism looming over that group as a whole, because I don't make too much out of week one, good or bad. I think you're not really able to assess what a team really is or where they're going to ultimately go until you get 4 weeks of data to really base your assessment. But I think right now the pass rush situation, if you're not able to win, if you get blanked again on the stat sheet and you're not winning your matchups up front, I think that's cause for concern.
Yeah, fair comment there, Andrew DiCecco. Let's I got to get your thoughts on the linebacker. This has been the story. It was White out, Dean in. Then yesterday was Vic Fangio basically saying, yeah, Dean won the job. He's the guy moving forward. But then he had Zach Bond outshine them on. Am I supposed to believe that Zach Bond is this difference-making defensive player? And now your thoughts on Dean. You like Dean a lot. I know you kept saying he played the best out of all these guys, so might not be that big of a surprise. But is this linebacking core now something that we don't have to worry about as much?
Yeah, I mean, I don't want to say I was bullish on the linebacker group, but I always said that I didn't have a lot of concern relative to the pass rush when you're looking at the Eagles' defense. I thought the linebacking group was going to give you a baseline level of production based on what I saw throughout the summer. Look, I saw every practice someone like a Zach Bond get more comfortable in diagnosing plays, flowing to the football. He's a highly intelligent player. Nakobe Dean, the first 2 weeks of camp weren't perfect. He really struggled in coverage, and Kenny Gainwell had his number. But I think as camp wore on and he got more comfortable with he's more further removed from the foot injury, you saw him be able to acquit himself a little bit better, moving sideline to sideline and in coverage. And he's exceptional attacking downhill. So I think that's a really good pairing of linebackers right there. And look, I know that a lot of folks are like, well, I don't know that he's going to be this all-world player, Zach Bond. He's not going to probably have 15 tackles and 2 sacks every week. But all you really have to base anything on is what you saw in that first week. And I think that he's shown you that he's a player that can give you that can be above adequate. And you see what Vic Fangio saw in him because he stepped right in and was being able to make some plays.
Yeah, good breakdown from Andrew DiCecco. I want to get your thoughts, and I know over at InsideTheBirds.com you wrote about Quinyon Mitchell. So the observations there, and then moving forward, Isaiah Rodgers, he says he thinks he can play. What happens with Rodgers? Does he go back to the outside? Do they say, you know what, now that Mitchell's been on the outside, we can't move him back in? So what is your take on that corner area and the way Mitchell played in that game, and then your thoughts on him moving forward?
Yeah, well, I think if you're the Eagles, you want to keep Quinyon Mitchell on the outside as often as you can without having to disrupt or stunt his growth. He really excelled playing the perimeter. He has the body type for it, and that's ultimately where they expect to have him, and that's what he was drafted to be. Now, the nickel role is interesting because, and I spoke to Cooper DeJean today, actually, but, Avonte Maddox, he gave the nod to the veteran in week one, given the Packers' deep receiving core. Avonte is definitely a step slow. He lost a step. I've reported that throughout training camp, but it all depends on where Cooper DeJean is in his development. And maybe you might see the Eagles try to alternate between the two players, because eventually you're going to have to get those startup costs out of the way and get Cooper involved, because he's going to be your nickel of the future. But I don't know that you want to move Quignon off his outside spot right now while he's playing so well.
Yeah, that's going to be interesting because it sounds like Rodgers thinks that he's about ready to go.
I think Rodgers will play week 2.
Yeah, so it looks like he sounds like he's ready to go, and we know Devin White. He today kind of said he was surprised that the coaches went the way they did. Will he be ready to go? Although not in. Do you think he'll be active for the game, even if he's not the starter?
Well, he was practicing today, so I would assume that he will be active. Although the Eagles do have 6 linebackers,
right.
So there's a chance where he could be inactive. He doesn't really play special teams, whereas Oren Burks and Ben Van Sumeren are core special teamers. So there's always that chance. But if you listen to what Nick Sirianni said today, if you listen to what Vic Fangio said yesterday, he's going to be involved. To what capacity, right. Whether that's this week or whether that's moving forward, that remains to be seen. But you have to think that they're going to find a way to get his speed and athleticism on the field. And furthermore, if they plan to move off of him at some point, you have to at least get him on the field and showcase what he's able to do, because the last time anybody saw Devin White play was when he was with the Buccaneers and he got benched and he wasn't performing very well. So I think he will factor in on defense. I just don't know how early.
All right, Bijan Robinson, a high draft choice, not like a jump off the page year last year. Some people say, hey, they didn't use him well. Your thoughts on the matchup with the Eagles' run defense against this version of Bijan Robinson?
Well, that's where it's really going to be put to the test, because I believe they gave up 7.8 yards a carry on average against the Green Bay Packers. So Bijan is a much better player than Josh Jacobs. So he's slippery, he's elusive, he can get out in open space, and he has really good contact balance. So tackling is going to be paramount. That's something that Nick Sirianni today said they're going to be focusing on because he acknowledged that the tackling wasn't where it needed to be. And to stop the Falcons' offense, which is going to, by and large, run through Bijan, you have to be able to do that. He gives the Eagles even more unique fits than Josh Jacobs did. So that's the player that they need to stop.
Yeah, well, then you got Pitts and you got Drake London, and I know London's not he hasn't
Mooney.
Mooney too. They added Mooney in the offseason. So this offense does have some weapons, and it'll be interesting to see how the secondary matches up with Pitts, a very athletic tight end. This will be a challenge.
Yeah, well, it all comes down to Kirk Cousins, and if he's able to get out and get the football out, or if the Eagles pass rush is going to come to play. Because if they aren't able to get home, Mike, there's going to be some advantages that I think, at least on paper, the Falcons are going to have, and which we outlined. But I think Kyle Pitts is another player. We talk about Bijan Robinson, but who draws Kyle Pitts coverage? He's a unique athlete. I believe he's 6'5", super athletic, can line up in the slot, can move him all around. So that's a guy that you need to watch as well. I wonder who draws him in coverage. To me, I would think the most logical answer would be Quinyon Mitchell, but that would require moving him likely from the outside on certain occasions.
Monday Night Football right here on 97.3 ESPN. There's the breakdown of the matchups there, Eagles and the Falcons, and, of course, both teams with playoff aspirations. The Falcons 0-1, Eagles 1-0, and that game's right here with Merrill Reese and Mike Quick on 97.3 ESPN. He's Andrew DiCecco from InsideTheBirds.com. Back next week with another breakdown here on the Sports Bash. All right, my man, we'll talk to you.
Thanks, man. Sounds good.